for all the questions I did, the percentage of respondents. And again, we only have 7. So, you know, we need more. But
Right.
I just did the percentage of people saying yes, because that tells us one thing, right?
Right.
And then I of those that said yes, what was the average rating? So we would get a very similar thing. So yeah, I mean, we have 6 items that everybody agreed was important, and we have another 6 that all but one of us agreed was important. And that person who disagreed could vary a little bit depending upon the item. But yeah, I mean, the interesting thing was the same thing stood out to me. The highest rated one was the on-bill financing, which would be that would seem to be kind of a low-hanging fruit for Excel if they want to get into that. I mean, I know it's probably adds a layer of complication for them, but I would think that might help them move their ball.
Right. I agree. I think it'd be amazing to have it. I kind of agree with what you said, and you probably hit the nail on the head. There is a certain level of complexity to it and something they've never done before. So they'd be wading out into uncharted territories, I think, with it. But
aren't they looking at, I think they're looking at doing it for bigger customers, right?
That's correct. Yeah. No, not for bigger customers, for residential is what they were looking at it for.
Oh, okay.
I think when last time I talked to them about it, they were talking about doing it for
real quick as our ED.
Yeah, I'll absolutely. Just to start off, just welcome everybody, and Mike will give an overview of the group and what we're up to. But to start off, we always remind everyone that we follow antitrust law, no collusion on pricing and territories and different things like that. So just want to remind everybody to keep that in mind, and legally, it's just prudent for us to follow that. So with that, we do have 2 co-chairs for the Lighting Action Committee. So we have Mike Bryant, who is here, as well as Scott Kelly. And they have an agenda for the next 6 months at least, and into the new year. As a reminder, before we start the meeting, we do have tomorrow morning the quarterly membership meeting, and it is packed with what is going on in 2022. We called it Buckle Up for 2022 because Excel is making a lot of decisions in their strategic issues filing, which is making decisions about all the rulemaking and all the goals for the next 5 years of the rebate plans and demand side management plans. Then also there's an update on the actual demand side management plans, and especially since in strategic issues, it includes the goals that Excel has to get to, carbon free and by 80% reduction in carbon use on the grid by 2030, and also 80% renewables delivering energy as well. And that includes beneficial electrification rebates that are going to be created. It also includes the gas, traditional energy efficiency, and the electric. So there's a lot happening and being decided, and you guys absolutely have to have a voice in the process to be able to get the rebates set up the way you need them for your business, and also keeping lighting viable and what that whole new world's going to look like by 2023. So and then also federal funds. We have a super high level overview of the funds, the one bill that's gone through, and then in the infrastructure bill. I didn't know that it was passed a month ago, by the way. So it is done, and it's going to talk about all that funding. So I think there's stackable rebates, and if Colorado Energy Office is the one who is going to be processing those rebates and deciding them in Colorado, we need to have input into that too. So there's more coming in addition to what we're working on for Excel. Be cool if you could stack rebates, right? Have companion rebates in addition to what the utilities are doing. So anyway, that kind of gives you a picture of next year. So if you can join, I can send out a meeting link to everybody afterwards. or Connie might do that. All right, take it away.
Nice plug for the quarterly membership meeting, Patricia. Thank
You
you. All right. Well, let's see. So, Jared, since you are new to us, would you mind just taking 30 seconds and introducing yourself to the group?
Sure, I've been a member of EEBC for a while, a few years now, but my day job is Vice President of McBride Lighting.
We are very glad to have you as part of this group. And let's see, sorry. Just you are you aware of the survey? Has anyone told you about this lighting survey?
I'm sure I've seen it. I had surgery a couple days ago, so I'm avoiding most anything. So
all right.
Good for you. That's a good idea.
Well, good luck recovering there, Jared. Well, we're really glad to have you. So the purpose of our group is we've been working on primarily on issues related to efficient lighting rebates for Excel, and the survey that we put together following up on as a result of the calls that we've had for the past several months. We kind of crystallized distilled down the ideas that we've kind of verbalized and got it down to a survey which is comprised of yes and no answers and rating items for how important it is to you if you say yes to it. So at any rate, Jared, we'll be sure to get that to you. We have what I was going to do on the call today with Scott is kind of review the preliminary results from initial responses that we've gotten.
The things that really rose to the top within the survey and what we found is, so one of the items was on bill financing. And that was something that a lot of folks were interested in. And I'm not sure if you're aware of this or not, but Excel is actually looking at doing that. Although they're looking at doing it on a pretty small scale right now. They're looking at doing it maybe for residential, and then it was going to be primarily centered around small businesses. And I can't remember the actual threshold, but it was pretty small. And I was of the opinion, I think several other folks were of the opinion that, expanding that out to larger customers would be a great option for getting projects to move forward. And I didn't know if you had any thoughts on that, Jared, but or if you'd given that any consideration. But
no, that's I'm on the same page as you. I obviously small business is great, but we don't do a ton of small business. Obviously, we have customers that ask for retrofits, and we do that kind of stuff. But we're always looking for the bigger picture and the bigger energy savings.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And then, another one of the ones that rose to the top was custom efficiency. Right now, and you've been involved in the program for a long time too. I know you have. The thing I found about custom efficiency is one, it's a black box from a standpoint of like, we've gotten reasonably good at knowing what's going to get approved and what's not going to get approved, but their TRC test is definitely something they've always held pretty close to their chest. And what we're finding is there's a lot of projects where we're taking care of maybe a shopping center or something like that, and they might have decorative fixtures out in that shopping center, and those just don't pass the TRC, and so they never get a rebate to them. And often those are the fixtures that either get left out of the project, and they're expensive fixtures usually, so they don't pay for themselves very well a lot of times. And so we would like to see a little more clarity with regard to the customer efficiency program. And then in addition to that, stronger rebates for those fixtures that kind of fall outside of that box of what.
And I agree with that. And the hard thing there is custom efficiency. It's almost like you're punished if you go through custom efficiency instead of being rewarded, especially for unique situations.
Right. And I don't know if you're seeing this too, but what I've seen is that there's just a lot of times where that stuff just gets left out of the project, that those custom efficiency type measures. And so you're left with a parking lot where maybe you get all the area lights done, but like the little decorative poles that are around, like, the walkways and things like that get left off of the project because they're hard to justify. So a little better rebates there. The other things that rose to the top were exterior rebates. We think that those should maybe be a little stronger than they are right now. They backed them off a little while back. And then in addition to that, controls for exterior lighting, there's currently no rebates for exterior lighting controls. And that's something that I, for one, would like to see have a rebate to it, because it's something our customers ask us about quite regularly.
I totally agree, Scott. The hard thing there is it can't be simplified controls. And obviously I'll go through this whole survey thing and I'll put my input in there, but since I've got y'all, I'll add a few things. Simple controls are one thing, but they need to be more complex controls, not just a time clock, not just a photocell. There has to be additional control options that pay higher rebates. So I'm all for that.
Agreed. And that was definitely one of the things that I was really hoping to push for too. And it didn't actually score that high, but the networked lighting controls and those types of controls, we would like to see much better rebate. I personally, anyway, would like to see much better rebates for those higher, more advanced type control systems, because they often get value engineered out. But I think that it could be beneficial to Excel going forward for a big thing that they're doing right now is their demand response program, and being able to incorporate that into some of the demand response stuff that they're doing, and just having, there's so many cool new technologies out there, but on retrofit projects they seem to typically get they often get value engineered out, I guess. So whether that be for interior or exterior, I would agree that I would be of the opinion, whether it be interior or exterior, that network lighting controls deserve a little higher rebate.
Totally agree. I think that if the customer is willing to put the effort in, especially if they've got, some sort of harvesting, some sort of dimming, some sort of occupancy, whatever it might be, some sort of network controlled system, that should warrant a significantly higher rebate. I honestly think it's Excel's ignorance, and I also think it's for the fact that Excel is trying to cover everything with a blanket instead of specific applications.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And let's see. So those were some of the ones that scored the highest. And you can go through. Obviously, you can go through the survey and look at it, and if there's other things on there, there's all sorts of other things on there that came up. Regarding like the instant rebates, and do we think those are where they need to be? And I was kind of the opinion that I think they're pretty close to where they need to be, but other folks obviously might feel differently about that. Yeah, so if you get it takes maybe about 10 minutes, I think, to fill it out. And I know Dan, who's on the call too, he hasn't filled it out too either. So if we can get a few more responses on here, that's obviously going to help us when we go back to Excel Energy with just having more people responding and playing a part in this, and it makes our voice a little bit louder, I guess, if you will.
Hey, Scott, my apologies. I'm guessing that Nick sent the Colorado Springs winds up here and knocked out my internet for a minute.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I was going to tell you, one thing I thought was pretty interesting about that today is I've got a coworker who's got a Tesla battery system at his house, and it monitors the weather for him. I thought this was really interesting. It kind of plays into some of the demand response stuff that we're doing, but it monitors the weather. And so it decided this morning that it was going to charge his battery to 100% so that his power wouldn't go down, and he would maintain like power, which I thought was kind of an interesting thing with this windstorm and stuff. Let us know. But and then I kind of went through the top 3 or 4 measures that scored highly, and mentioned those to him. And then, obviously there's others on here that I'm sure he'll have an opinion on one way or the other. But yeah, there's about 19. I think there's 19 measures in total that we had come up with. And then, Patricia, what was your thought on it? One thing I want to ask you is your thought. I think you mentioned around 5 would be a reasonable number to take to Excel as a kind of a wish list. Is that about right?
Yeah, well, and there's a couple things that I wanted to bring up. the initial group, and this is a question for both you, for Mike and Scott. Initially, we thought we would have about 8 responses. We have 8 so far. You know, I was thinking 12 to kind of give an indication of, is there anything you need to change on the survey? And then we were going to, Connie and had talked about sending out to the larger group of the EEBC. We also have a list of 3,000 companies, and there's other lighting companies that aren't members right now. Might be a way to entice them to join, as well as, but you know, if we can get additional feedback, wondering, that was one question, if there was anything about the survey that you guys would recommend update, make changes, or something that, you know, was stumbled across that was awkward, or something that we need to make a couple changes on this first round. So that'd be my first question. And then then I can kind of outline what I think we can do with Excel.
Let me pitch that over to the other Scott. Scott, because right now you're the only other one that has taken the survey. Did you have any problems with it, or was there any confusion or anything that you thought was poorly worded when you were taking it, or did it go smoothly for you?
Me, Scott?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, the survey went smoothly. I thought there was some topics that probably wouldn't need to be brought up to Excel. So it's a little too broad right now. And yeah, we need to narrow it down and be more specific and really find our focus. And the survey was a good idea to try to get us there.
Okay, and nothing you would change about just the technical part of taking it? Did it seem to flow easily?
Yeah, I guess so. I didn't really think about it when I was taking it.
Oh, good.
That's a survey critiquer. So I just bulldozed through it, and
Great.
Yeah.
All right, well, good. If there was something that you were like, oh, I couldn't even figure out what to do after number 10, or but if nothing came up, then that's positive.
I would have to sit down with it and study it if, but
Yeah.
It was acceptable. We need to get as many answers to it as we can.
Right.
Maybe our group can make it a little more narrow before we send it out to a broader audience, though.
And that was part of the goal. Yeah, was to go, okay, what do we need to pull off? Which questions and which ones rose to the top? That would be the next step after you get a couple more.
I think, and we have a few that I think we definitely would probably weed out. I do want to get the full complement of our lighting members taking this thing first before we prune it and start jettisoning things. But I think we've got a few that most likely are going to get tossed out. It was remarkable just how much consensus there was here among the majority of it. There's really only kind of a handful, maybe a third of the items was there, much in the way of differences of opinion, really.
Can we kind of look at it with this meeting? Like, are you in a position to put it up on screen and show us? Because I think you've done everything you can to beg our members to take this survey. I mean,
short of paying people, right?
Yeah. No, I have 2 more to take it still as well. And I think Dan, you need to take it still as well. And you have somebody else in your company you want to do that with. I don't know.
We have Jared now to take it.
Yeah, Jared. So I don't know if it would sway or not. I can tell you a couple things just in terms of culling it down. That with Excel, the goal is to have a meeting with the channel manager and the program managers in lighting. And we say I think it's important to include the ones that don't rise to the top, because obviously they're on your radar as things to be thinking about. There might be more emerging technology. It sounds like advanced control systems maybe didn't score as high as maybe the top 5 did, but it seems to be an emerging technology that needs to really be looked at and could, maybe pull some case studies from other utilities or something that have good rebates for those. So there's a couple things. So I think that's like, what are the top 5, rows to the top, and then having the list of the ones that you want to include to say, we're watching these and we're looking at, we expect some of these to become more viable as technology is changing and as Excel changes their savings goals next year, and the basis for them and strategic issues, that might switch some of those around and they might become more valuable to Excel. We don't know, so I think having them on their radar is good.
Well, too, and by the way, of course, with as small of a sample as we have right now, a few more responses could easily tip things one way or the other for some of these and where they are in the rank order. But I would say too, if say 10 of the 20 items or areas that we have here, there's decent consensus about, then we might have of that, the top 5, but then 6 through 10 are right below those top 5. So I think we would want to share all this with Excel, because from their perspective, items like 1 may not be a go, like on the on bill financing. For whatever reason, they may say, that's a great idea, there's just no way that we can do it, and that gets killed. But items 2, 3, and 4 are easy and they're receptive to discussing that, and items 7 and 9 are also easier for them to implement, or they're more receptive to it. So they're all fairly close in their rank order, so we might as well share that with them and see what gets traction.
And I don't want to beat the advanced controls thing to death, because I know it didn't score that high. But I do believe that's something that, I think it's got cross benefits for Excel Energy. And I think maybe was it you, Patty, that sent out an email, but somebody was talking with the demand response folks over there. And I just feel like that's one of those things where it's kind of in its early adoption phase right now. And, because Excel's putting so much energy into this demand response program that they're putting together, it would have benefits to that program as well, not just DSM, but the demand response as well. So
that is, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, that's an excellent point. And that's why I'm kind of saying there might be when we change the criteria, you say, what's the things that will improve your business the most right now? Then those 5 things rise to the top. If we say, what are the emerging technologies that would be ideal for DR response? I think that might change, right. So like you're saying, it's an emerging technology, early adoption, but when we're talking about going towards DR and counting carbon as the savings instead of energy efficiency, I can totally turn all these around. You know what I mean? Like other things rise to the top. So maybe if we include the top 5 right now and say, here's the ones to watch, and this is why, that we're gonna, if you want us to gather information, those emerging ones like controls also are a good, if they're a viable candidate for a pilot, maybe that's something this group could get together and say, we want to pilot controls, and between all of us, we'd have X amount of jobs in the next 6 months that could be included in a pilot. That's a possibility we haven't even talked about. So that's something to think about too. And when we look at what to do with this data, when we go to Excel.
Yeah, I mean, well, not to beat this to death, but the majority of us, the vast majority of us, said that network lighting controls is important. Important to them. It's crucial to their business. Now, when where it slipped a little bit was that ranking of how important it is to them, that rating of it, and that is, like we're saying, I think that's based on where things are right now. If both the technology changes, and maybe incentives change so that it's much more affordable and makes more sense from the customer's end, then I think we all say, yeah, I'm happy to include it, and it's a much more central part of my business.
Right.
Okay.
Was somebody going to comment?
Yeah. Well, one thing I was going to say about that, and that's the last thing I'll say about it and one thing we didn't have a question on our thing about is the one thing about that stuff is I do believe it requires more upfront homework, and it requires more upfront just information gathering, so that hopefully when you do get it in, it's commissioned properly, and that it doesn't get ripped out like a year later because nobody knows how to use it, or it was poorly designed and put together. And so one of the things Excel had in the past, and it's been a while since I had it, and I think I mentioned this on one of the other calls, was they did have a design assistance program, and something like that with something like the advanced lighting controls, where they do get more complex and they require more upfront homework, would be maybe one of the things I would also push for with Excel is some sort of design assistance rebate that would assist customers with being able to put systems like this in place.
Good point. I'm putting down top 5 today, and then emerging technologies.
Yeah, I'd love to add my 2 cents there
ahead, Jim.
in regards to lighting systems. I mean, Scott and I, we walk thousands of properties a year, and we see extremely overlit facilities and extremely underlit facilities. And I don't think people should be punished for either. And I think that the rebates should always be higher if a redesign comes to the best interest of the customer. If I walk into a building that has, let's say it's a small office building, and it's so overlit, I'm getting 100-foot candles on top of someone's desk, and I change it from 60 fixtures to 22. Those are the things that experts in our field should be rewarded for doing. But then you've got these other companies that come in and then they just say, hey, we're just going to slap some type A lamps in there and get the best bang for our buck and get the heck out of here. And the customer still has those same problems. And that goes with being underlit as well. People will come in and they'll just toss in something cheap and easy, and it doesn't solve any of the problems. So this is a little bit more on the granular scale when Scott's talking about controls and network controls, and people should be rewarded for that. There should be an all-encompassing reward system when it comes to people's lighting in general, controls included. So that should, I think, should be another key thing when it comes to lighting and Excel and rebates, is they should reward people for making systems better and making the entire system better, not just replacing one for one, because that's how Excel's designed. Excel designs their prescriptive rebate based on a one-for-one retrofit application. And you see these companies come in and they retrofit these people, and then I get a call 6 months later and it's like, Jared, this is terrible lighting, can you fix this? And it's like, they did it because it's Excel's rebate. That's why they did it, and it got the best bang for the buck. So
it's like teaching to the test, right? You get what you pay for. You get what you reinforce. Yeah.
So
oh, sorry, Patricia, just real quick, Jared, you're going to find one of the questions we do ask on the survey is sort of a bonus rebate touching on this for defixturing and smarter lighting design. Using potentially fewer fixtures than the traditional lighting layout was.
Yeah, and that's higher up on my list as far as things that need to be considered. And I think it can be lumped in with smarter systems, smarter controls, smarter lighting systems.
Yeah, right.
You have to be careful though, gang. Excel is very regimented and defined, and we're talking about things that are subjective. And when it comes to rebating, we've got to try to keep it easy and make sure that things are easy to define and not subjective, because they won't throw money into the wind. They will provide money for the right things that make sense, but generally they're really well defined and not so subjective. So we have to be careful, because when we get into these areas we're currently discussing, It's not bulb for bulb, for sure.
Isn't, I was kind of looking for the overall, everything that you're talking about. And it sounds like you're saying the prescriptive one-to-one doesn't always work or doesn't work necessarily. And when you're talking about solving for the problem, defixturing and those different types of things, are you really looking for more of a performance-based rebate structure that would enable, where that's why controls systems fits into that so well?
Well, I don't think the existing prescriptive doesn't work wholeheartedly. I think there's a lot of excellent applications for prescriptive rebates. And to Scott's point, yes, Excel is got to make it simple for a lot of people. And that's why I think the prescriptive should stay in place. But there should be a bonus rebate on a redesign that says, hey, according to IES standards, I went from 120 foot candles on grade to 40 inside this office building, and those kind of things should be rewarded. Yes, it's going to be difficult and it's going to be a custom solution, but I think if we can get to the brass tacks of it, it'll work pretty well for people, for the experts in the industry.
That's why I thought a custom application where it's about wattage reduction. The project uses this many watts.
Right.
We're going to get it down to this many watts, and let's calculate some custom money for my partner here.
I can get on board with that.
Wattage reduction, just easy.
That's a really good idea, Scott. I mean, that where this redesign would end up saving more energy as well as end up being a better outcome. It makes sense to do it in a custom.
The only thing that you're left guessing about then is how often is the space occupied? How often will the daylight control dim it from 30 to 60 to 90? It's still subjective.
Yeah, it's just frustrating to me when I see an overlit space and the easiest thing to do is just replace one for one, because that's what you're incented to do. And where it would actually, the customer could save money by buying, 20% fewer fixtures for the same space, but that's going to take a lot more electrical work, and they're going to get a smaller rebate. So it's going to be much more money out of their pocket. One to that, I guess, Jared, whoever was talking about, Scott, maybe it was you, that an overlit space, and then someone just goes in and just throws in type A lamps or whatever, and the net result is still it's way overlit. It's a poor outcome. I'm almost wondering if and who knows, it'll probably get shut down, but if one thing Excel could do would be to go in after these projects and basically short survey the customer. How happy are you with the outcome of your project, right? Because I think poor work, maybe the customer got a rebate, but they're not really happy with it. Excel should kind of hear about that, and maybe you get enough bad dings for a given contractor, they fall off the list of preferred providers. Because I think, from listening to us, and I know everybody thinks like me, that at the end of the day, we're trying to do the best for our customers, and doing a crappy job just for a higher rebate doesn't do anybody any good.
So that, kind of goes into the piloting idea emerging, and there's a quality, do they do quality install random checks now on jobs like they do in HVAC?
I don't think they do any QI.
Not quality, I don't think.
Yeah.
They'll check it to make sure what was said was done, but
right.
It's not a quality assessment. It's more like a quantitative assessment, I would say.
I guess the flip side to it, though, maybe the happy medium is okay. Rather than pay for reducing the number of fixtures, and all the rewiring that might entail, et cetera, that they continue to rebate at the at for one for one, but you introduce the lighting controls so you can dim down the fixtures. So rather than, you can dim them down to 50% or whatever, and then you lower the light level. But, again, that circles back to needing to sweeten the rebate on network lighting controls. There's a couple of ways of skinning the cat, right?
Frankly, there's so many options today with fixtures and retrofits that you can dial in. If the customer looks at you and says, I'd love more lumens in this space, man, you can get more lumens with any type of product. There's so many options. So even if you stay one for one, you can give them less light level, much more light level. And I'm sitting here thinking, that goes back to the wattage question with what we're trying to accomplish for XL. Reducing their wattage. The customer was like more lumens, their wattage is going to be reduced likely a little less, or their numbers going to be a little bit more because the product will be a higher efficient product, which is more expensive.
I don't think we brought it up at all, but isn't one of the requirements for the network lighting controls that you set the high trim for whatever you put in at 80%? It can't be any higher than 80%.
Yeah, it is. I don't have it in front of me. I think it's, I
Which is
can't remember what the
completely
percentage.
arbitrary. It's like, okay, so I'm going to put
Right.
in, an 80-watt fixture when they only need 60, but I got to reduce it, set it to no more than 80% of the output. So yeah, that's kind of bass backwards.
Yeah, agreed.
Is it to account for light level depreciation? As lights age, they perform less optimally, so you have the opportunity to increase the trim as the product ages to maintain the same light level. I think that's primarily why.
Yeah, I don't know if that was factored into why, that's definitely a reason that you would get a higher wattage fixture and then trim it down, but I'm not sure if that was factored into Excel's decision behind why they will only rebate it that
First
way.
I've heard of it, but it makes sense.
Yeah. But I'm in total agreement. You can obviously go about the redesign in a couple different ways, right? You can do, a defixturization, go in with less fixtures and redesign the space, or you can put in advanced controls, and with LEDs the way they are, obviously you can trim them down to get the light levels to what you need. Either way will often accomplish your goals, and either one can be the right solution in any given application, I think. But to have to have some sort of the more energy you squeeze out of a system, though, I find the more it costs, right? Like for every additional watt that you're trying to gain out of it, with these controls or defixturizing, that costs more to do that, right? And so, in my opinion, it should be rebated at a you're squeezing more energy out, but it takes a little more incentive in order to make that happen, or to get the
last
customer
10%. Yeah.
to get that last 10%. Yeah. So,
Not delamping.
well, no, not delamping. That's true, but that's definitely
that's kind of what I want to hear from Excel. Like, how valuable is that last 10% to you? Is that where you want to put your bucks? If so, because you already have someone who is signing on to lighting efficiency, and they're more easy, they're more willing to adopt the network lighting control and get that extra 10%. It's an easier sell, but at a much higher expense. I'm kind of curious, what Excel's, from their perspective.
There's lower hanging fruit.
Yeah, my guess is you're probably, at least at first, maybe there's different chapters. The first chapter is just save as much as we can for the least amount of money, and then we try to squeeze out the last bit of juice from the lemon, and if we have to, and then we have to pay up for that. I don't know. What do you think, Scott?
Well, I don't know if that was me, Scott, but the one thing I would say about, if you don't do it up front, maybe I've mentioned this before, if you don't do it like initially, then it usually doesn't, like if you're doing all this other stuff, right, and it's inexpensive to do, sometimes then you can combine the other stuff that's a little more expensive and it all blends together and you can get lift off on it, right? If you just do the low hanging fruit today and say, oh, we're going to worry about that tougher stuff a year from now, it often doesn't get done because it's got to stand all by itself, and
Right.
and getting it to stand all by itself is pretty tough sometimes, I think.
Yeah.
Can I read my list that I have from what you guys said in terms of areas I think to talk about with Excel? So we have the top 5 that came out of the survey today. Then there's emerging technology and early adoption that to be looked at in light of like demand response. I don't know what other programs, but demand response was one of them, since that is one of the high priorities that Excel is working on going forward and improving. Which ones would be piloting ideas, which was the network advanced control systems, and how important is the last 10%. And then we talked about the lower hanging fruit, and you'll do the rest later. I added performance-based versus like, where does that fit in? And I have all the examples. You guys talk about defixturing and smart design and different things. And then I added case studies, because anything that you're looking at, that whether, especially in the piloting side or, your top 5, that anything that you can pull case studies, projects from other markets that are outside of Excel or that are from other utilities that have rebates, something like what you're talking about, especially if there was some DR pilot related rebates for lighting. That's the list I created so far. Does that sound right, or would you change anything to it?
That sounds right. The one thing I was going to mention, I know we've talked about this a little bit in the past, but how some of this and maybe the demand response stuff would tie into their TEP plan too. And I don't know if they have any data regarding that, but and I know I'd mentioned this on one of the previous calls too, that the person I talked to said their peak load is not going to shift for a little bit of time, but eventually it probably is going to shift, with this transportation electrification plan. And so the stuff that we're putting forth today and the stuff that we're looking at today, how can we, not only in response to demand response, but also in response to electrification of vehicles as well, like how can that play into their overall goals and being able to meet customer demand as well? And do they have any data as to how they think their load is gonna look, in 2030?
Yeah, I mean, they're talk about quite often that they know that their peak is going to shift, especially in the winter versus summer, that they're looking at that the peak load is going to shift to the winter instead of the summer,
right?
With heat pumps and whatnot. And
it's not just EV, right? Yeah, it's all this electrification that they're putting forth. Yeah, right.
Yeah. So they're expecting that. So I don't know, is there any way that we can test some of those ideas, and where does lighting fit into being part of that solution? I mean, that's what you guys want to get to, so that the next 10 years, you kind of have a trajectory and a plan to keep talking and bringing those things to them as solutions.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I know we talked about it before, but that if 10 years from now, the winter nighttime load, or 8 years from now, whenever it is much higher than it is right now, then, doesn't it make sense if we're putting in fixtures that last 10, 15 years to, nighttime fixtures that we get those in place and be as efficient as possible to reduce that nighttime load now in anticipation of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm on the Denver sustainability, or tuning into their meetings. Their primary focus is to get residential and commercial buildings to shift from fuel heating to electric heating.
Yeah.
And they're going to provide grants, and they're going to try to provide the gap between, generally a building would certainly buy natural gas, but there's going to be an expense gap. They're going to try to cover it to encourage people to go electric instead.
And all new construction, right, is going to be And Patricia, do you have a sense for, or does Denver have a sense for when, you know, all new construction is going to, you know, 100% be electrified for heating?
There's not an awful lot of meat behind their requests or requirements. I mean, they can't force buildings to do this. They
are though.
Can they not?
They're going to put through, I mean, from what they say now, the vision, the CASR, the climate change action, resilience and sustainability.
cars.
Yes, cars. Isn't that an oxymoron? So they 2024, they are going to release all their codes for new buildings to be required to be net zero. And I've heard both. I've heard that it's commercial and electric in 2024, or it's commercial first and it's electric in 2027. So they are one of the first before Boulder that are going to push new building codes
for new construction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well,
and they're supposed to be doing retro. So they are planning on it. That's what they say they're going to do.
Does Excel have any data that says that their grid can handle it? I just know, I used to live in Sloan's Lake, and I just know if every house in Sloan's Lake got an electric car charging station, it would shut the grid down because those old houses don't have the power. So does Excel have any data that says the grid can handle it, especially when it comes to EV or electric heat?
Well, that is a very good question, because I mentioned earlier that I presented to Carrier on their HVAC and their heat pumps in electrification. And there's the presentation that the Beneficial Electrification League, which includes Boulder and Denver and Holy Cross, PRPA, so all the utilities north, Longmont, Fort Collins, Estes Park, and Loveland, as well as a tri-state, so 17 co-ops. And the EBC, I feel like the lone wolf of the business voice of energy efficiency in the group. And then also sweeps in that group as well, Rocky Mountain. So anyway, the point is we put together a 20-minute presentation. It's on our website. We can send it to you guys, which goes through all the goal making and setting by 2030 that's happened with the governor, the greenhouse gas plan, as well as the 6 utilities that are delivering 91% of the energy in Colorado have already made commitments to be 80% carbon-free electric grids by 2030. So all these goals have been made, but Jared, that's the thing. Excel says they can get, right now, Excel in 2022 is already generating 49% of their energy from renewables. Nobody knows that. Like,
wow, we're there already?
And they're dumping a boatload of nighttime energy right now. Like, there's no big batteries to store it. The wind turbines don't stop pumping. Nobody's using air conditioning at night. They are dumping a boatload of nighttime energy, according to what I'm told from Excel.
So kind of that gives the backdrop on your question. But the point is that and Kirkpatrick, because we got those kind of questions like, is there enough electricity to electrify the grid by 2030? And, you know, she's saying yes, but she is now putting together, and we'll let you guys know, a 1 hour, I don't know how long it'll be, but she's putting together a webinar answering that very specific question. How is Excel going to do it? How do they know they can do it? You know, what's going to have to change? And part of what they're basically expecting to change is that they're going to ask homeowners to start putting in, you know, heat pumps and solar and different things so they can move energy around. So they can't rely 100%, I don't think, on their resources. They have to be able to do those types of things. And then also they have the technology now to get to that 80% or 85% by 2030. And they are, you know, going to have to rely on new technology for the last 15% to get to 100% electric carbon-free grid by 2040 or 2050.
They need to rely on residential rooftops.
Yep, that's part of their solution, you know, that has to be in the mix, right? The one goal that the group is talking about, the Beneficial Electrification League, is having meetings with the distributors and manufacturers of heat pumps. And here in Colorado, 78 of them showed up to the first meeting. And one of the things that they're going to be asking is, why aren't you guys just switching out they're asking Excel and saying, why don't you discontinue air conditioning rebates and give us a rebate to install a heat pump in place of an air conditioner, and boom, you've got dual fuel, and we can put those in all day long and switch over 75% of our business tomorrow to heat pumps. So that's the kind of stuff that I'm seeing, discussions that are kind of happening that with Excel is having with all these different groups. And I think, you know, how is lighting going to be a part of that solution in the next 10 years? You know, so I think some of those things that you guys talked about are really good piloting ideas. I know, Jared, did I answer your question?
Yeah, it's just my skeptical brain saying,
Yep.
you know, I agree with this, but the cost is going to be obscene. I'm working on a project now where a company wants to put 2 car chargers in, and it's going to cost them $100,000 because of their antiquated electrical system. So, and then also because their current load provided by Excel can't handle it. So that's when I see these things, that's just one business, and these businesses that, if there's a mandate like the BPO in Boulder, if these things start coming down the pipeline, it's not feasible. I mean, for people to fork out this kind of money with a antiquated grid, and a grid that is unable to handle these much more complex energy consuming systems, it just seems to me like it's going to be, I'm a bit of a skeptic. It just seems to me it's going to be, I love the goals, but I don't see it happening unless major change happens and the government Excel starts giving things away for free, which we all know isn't free. It comes out of the taxes in our bottom dollar. So.
Well,
Jared, I was going to ask you, are you concerned about sort of the main infrastructure of the grid, you know, the big pipe, or are you more concerned about sort of the last mile or so? From transformer to house and stuff.
All of it. I just remember when we first got into this industry, Excel's main goal, why they even started offering rebates, was so they didn't have to build another power plant because they were on the verge of doing so. And yes, rebates and lighting rebates and everything has helped tremendously. But with population increase, with homes, I mean, I'm seeing homes go up everywhere, and very few of them are off the grid, and they're still, you know, relying on the grid. And yes, the new homes are more efficient and have better grids and better systems, but there are still a ton of old homes and systems in this state. And to force people to update those, that's not a thing I see a lot of people getting on board with.
Yeah, well, and I think too, I mean, there's things that I'm seeing, you know, where there's a company, Employ Energy, that I work with, who's a member of the Eebc, and they're selling smart monitors for both the panel and for the new AMI smart meters that Excel's putting in, along with EV chargers, batteries, and smart plugs. And thought it was interesting, Tri-State, in one of the meetings that they had with Emporia that I was in, and they were like, hey, if I just spend $130 on this monitor that you can put in the panel, and you can then put smart plugs on, and you can move the load around with all the equipment and everything that's happening in the house, they're like, we could avoid, or the homeowner could avoid, having to put a $5,000 new panel in to handle their car charger load, and extend that for a while to the grid gets up to speed. And I thought, wow, I hadn't thought about that before, you know. So who knows, maybe Excel will have campaigns and give away smart monitors, because then on the back end, you know, the homeowner can set controls in that device, in the app, and basically say, when my energy level gets to this, notify me and move this around and do that. Like, they can put all pre-settings in there and do all those things now through that silly little $130 monitor.
Guys, a home car charger is only a dryer line. It's 30 amps. And the home car chargers actually have an app where you can set it to begin starting to charge your car at 3 a.m. when energy is ample, and it'll be ready to go at 7:30 a.m. So it's not that much energy requirement for a car charging station. Your commercial customer may have been looking at 2 fast car charging stations, Jared, which do require a boatload of energy. But level 2 car charging stations, just 50 amp line.
Yeah, no, I understand the electrical side of it. We do car chargers almost on the daily basis, but the reality of it is I'm talking a little bit larger picture when it comes to an entire neighborhood. And let's say let's say, hey, you're a 50-year-old husband, wife, and you've got 2 kids that are driving, and you have four electric cars in that house, and you've got 4 electric car chargers. And every house is like, that's not a reality yet. I mean, we're nowhere near it. The grid cannot handle that. And it may be in one person's home, not every person's home.
Right.
Right.
I wonder if we can handle the early adopters, and then there's going to be like, it'll get put on ice on a big pause button while we can't, we realize that the grid can't handle more. We got to get, we're forcing to have to upgrade the grid to get the
and I'm just playing devil's advocate. I just want to hear everybody's opinion, just because these conversations come up quite a bit, and I want to be as well rounded as I can. So
what do you need in terms of education in that area?
Info from Excel.
Yeah.
Yes, I know that they have some renewables, but as you stated earlier, the renewables are being wasted. They're being thrown away because they're not being utilized properly. Okay, so hey, Excel, what's it going to take to get those renewables to the people efficiently? Is that $1 billion project? Is that $100,000 project? And why haven't you done it if it's only XYZ? And it just frightens me to see all of these things being wasted and wasted and wasted. And we're trying to get to this net zero, but this money and these resources are being wasted. So what's it going to really take? What is their major holdup if they're already throwing energy out by the wayside?
Millions of home lithium batteries, millions of home solar systems will actually help, and the cars themselves have lithium batteries in them, and all of that will actually help balance the grid a bit.
Yeah, until we have to dispose of those solar panels and those batteries for new ones, right?
Well, hopefully we can recycle things then.
So by the way, Excel's working on that right now because of the exact same questions you're asking. And I think that Excel was kind of shocked. Like, they were like, why would somebody question that? That's ridiculous. At least like the believers in the energy transition, acted like, well, that's a silly question. Of course they can. And then we were like, Excel, you better come up with some education on this, because that question happens before you can even get somebody to consider a heat pump. And before you can get somebody to consider, different things. And so, so I am going to take that feedback to Anne, by the way, since she's driving. They've moved Anne Kirkpatrick out of the position of the trade alliance manager, and she's now driving the solutions for beneficial electrification strategies at Excel. And then they've, backfilled those roles, at least on the HVAC side. There's 2 new guys, Josh and somebody else, who are now on that side in the department, to work with contractors. So anyway, so I'm going to take that kind of like your specific questions, like how much is it going to cost and when is it really happening? Like, I don't know if they're considering those kind of questions in that presentation. And I'm wondering, do you think it's too early for the Eebc to have that Excel come in and do that presentation to us in March?
On how they're going to get there? Am I understand that right? Or
yeah, like what's it going to take? How are they going to?
No, I would think they would want to have that, like, and I'm in total agreement that the path from here to there is, I think about it too. It's unclear like how we're going to get there. There's a lot of complexities to getting from point A to to Z on this deal. And I'd be curious to hear their feedback. And, I think, almost from a self standpoint, it presents a lot of really exciting opportunities for companies like
Yep.
ours, right? And
Yep.
like business opportunities and stuff like that. But having a kind of a clear idea of what their vision is, and then how we can like slot ourselves in on it. I think I'd rather hear sooner rather than later, I guess, and be a part of the conversation versus, finding out later this is what they've decided and how they're going to do it. And,
Well,
we might have some good feedback for them too. Or I
I was
believe
gonna
we would
say,
have good feedback.
you kind of need to hear that because you'll end up thinking about your lighting ideas here differently when you say, wow, should we pilot? I can tell you Thrive Homes is the first scale builder that's going to do a 325 all electric home development, and they're breaking ground next year. They've been working on it for 4 or 5 years. And, I'm like, why are we not piloting all this stuff in that development? What are you doing, Excel? Why aren't we doing a pilot to these guys, and the question is, should lighting be a part of that? What would that look like? I don't know. And they say, so I sat in a meeting that they had with Denver, the city of Denver, and Denver was even unaware really that they just weren't paying attention to them. Like, these guys are doing exactly what you're saying. You're going to put the codes out. They already build net zero homes and they're selling them standard, and they already have an all electric development that everybody knows about them nationally, but no one knows about them locally. It's the weirdest thing. But I'm like, can we connect even within the Eebc? Now I'm going to talk a big picture here, but with these working groups, I was wondering, like, dang, should I be trying to bring in and have a builder group for like net zero and high performance and electric homes? Like, should we find out there's 30 builders who are doing all electric homes, and then how do we connect them with you guys on the lighting side that are progressive and would have ideas for them, and how do we connect them with the right, HVAC contractors who are installing heat pumps? I'm just wondering if we can create a little ecosystem for business that's doing that high-end stuff that, like the controls. Wouldn't the controls be cool to put into pilot with 300 homes that are actually have batteries and solar and EV chargers in them? I don't know. That's
if the builder is putting in LED, lighting is only 10% of the energy budget, probably.
Right.
So
okay. So what does that mean for the future then? Like the stuff we're talking about here, is it all retrofit mostly?
We got to get these old tubes out of the buildings. We got to find a way to get it.
We're commercial, so so I'm not sure that there's a huge overlap for residential. It's such a residential lighting is such a small piece of it because it's off peak typically, and not a big consumer. But that I don't think we're not really in the residential business.
Right. Okay. So that doesn't really fit then. If they put LEDs in, they're fine. They don't need any controls or anything like that.
They have dimmer switches. Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
We've gone past the top of the hour. So I just wanted to call that out. I wanted to set our next meeting. I'm looking at January 12th, if that this Wednesday kind of time frame, same 4 o'clock, January 12th. Does that work?
Works for me.
Okay, good deal. So by then we should have the rest of our members having whoever we can respond to, coerce or whatever otherwise to complete the survey, and we'll have that first chunk of it done. Then we can kind of look at and address whether we want to, and I think we probably do, extend an abbreviated version of this thing to non-members, so we have a larger sample that we can talk to Excel, other non-lighting members, but hopefully in the process entice some to join the EEBC and get on the train.
Yeah,
See that kind of being the next step.
Mhm.
Because we're going to need to buttress this.
yeah. The more reach you guys have, the better.
Okay.
And when are we trying to get in front of Excel again?
When?
Yeah, to present.
Well, I mean, I think it I want to do it as soon as possible, but I think I feel like we need to have,
Results back, probably.
yeah, but maybe, I've been thinking about it too. Maybe we want to do this. Maybe we want to have an initial meeting with them, share with our member results, right?
Uh-huh.
And then hear from them what, get some feedback. So we can together maybe pick out what some of the top areas would be that we'd want to roll out to, non-members, and see how kind of what sticks in the broader universe.
Realize they're going to be in a pressure cooker in March. So when they start working on, they've moved the filing dates for the plans to July 1st.
Mm-hmm.
But they're going to be in a mad dash from March to July. So I think we really have to.
Can we get in front of, can we have a first meeting with them? Can we have a first meeting with them in January? Later
Yeah.
January?
I'm just worried that you might get one shot meeting and not multiple. Like let's just put it this way. If you go in with a pilot idea, they're not going to be creative and expand your pilot idea into what they want. It's kind of got to fit for them. They're not, it just depends on the person, and I don't know the managers of the lighting I'd be going through, the DSM side. So,
Guys, briefly, at this point, I just want to make a quick statement. I think that out of all the things we've discussed, this on-bill financing is so massively important that we try to find a way to emphasize it and have a pilot planned, a backup position planned, a negotiation idea ready. I mean, if we could convince them to do maybe just a small pilot for just buildings that need tube replacement and just buildings that need delamping, that's a massive savings. And boy, the bills would really drop. So the customer would certainly be able to pay the financing piece if they're worried about that. But that'd be a real nice way to experiment with it, pilot it. And I just think it's huge. It would do massive things for lighting in our region if we could get that somehow.
they just kind of bang for the buck.
Well, they're having that free T8 program now for reticent, they're late adopters. So I didn't put it in the survey because I couldn't figure out a concise way of doing it. But basically, I feel like all of us contractors should at minimum be able to get the same deal that they are reserved for this select contractor to do this free T8 program. So and then
I didn't know about it.
Well, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what that is.
We'd also be able to find a bunch of
it's competition against us. Frankly, Excel, on the residential side, Excel will go in for multifamilies, go in and put in free LED lamps, replacing incandescents, and so they have it for a limited scope of their customers, their commercial customers. They're offering to do
the
type B T8 replacement, just retrofit. And the customer pays nothing.
Also, this on-bill financing is being done all around the nation. We'd be able to find some terrific case studies. And if we could get their big toe to dip into that water of some on-bill financing for some niche or something, they would probably expand it in the future. It'll work wonderful for them.
That's the kind of stuff that will perk up their ears for sure.
Well, they have the partner, the financing partner, whatever I can't remember, the knife. you know,
Yes.
that they partner with. But, you know, maybe what we're talking about is, you know, Excel's not going to fund this, but maybe Knife ends up working kind of behind the scenes rather than, you know, having that extra step of involving financing.
It might be a
You know?
third party
Yeah.
that pays the amount and they don't notice it and don't have to become a bank.
Right. Right.
Well, there's also the Clean Energy Fund that just got 30 million from legislation to fill in the gap for projects that traditional financing would not cover, and that PACE, this is all commercial side, you know, but I mean that PACE would not, is too difficult, right? They can't like get financing through that as well. But they're looking at residential stuff too, but mostly, yeah, I have to learn more about it. That's Paul Schaffenberger on our board, Mike. That's So I don't know if there's something that is their job. That's what they've, you know, that's to create things like that, like this that you're talking about.
Yeah. Excel doesn't have to necessarily get into issuing corporate bonds just to cover this. You know,
I used to be in the lending industry, and I know Jensen pretty well. I could reach out to see if this has been talked about, thought about, if he would like to talk about it more or develop it with us, or, you know, just, what's going on in behind the scenes with this. Okay.
Cool. All right.
Okay.
Anything else, guys? This has been a good conversation.